The Gaudreaus of New Jersey had a beautiful family, two wonderful hockey playing sons, two beautiful daughters. And on the eve of one of the daughters' weddings, the two sons, both professional hockey players, were taken from us by a drunk driver. Today, we're going to talk about the 911 call, and we're going to show you the body cam footage from that incident. It's a sad case. All that and what it means for your weekend on the Comm Center.
Wake Up America, it's the Comm Center with Drew Breezy. It's a TV show on the internet about two best friends who are summoned by a small town sheriff to investigate a Russian collusion angle when a pig wins a pie eating contest. I'm John. I'm an actual 911 dispatcher. I've been doing that in the field now officially for 10 years. Congratulations to me. I'm joined, as always, by my podcasting partner with police benefits. That's Drew Breezy. He was a police officer for just shy of 29 years. He did make detective on his last day. Drew, I understand that this is a sad case. Drunk driving is it's a problem that is really across the country. I myself had an uncle taken before I was born. He was on a motorcycle. He was killed by a drunk driver. It's something that happens at a lot of places, and I think we've become kind of numb to the idea of drunk driving. I know Mothers Against Drunk Driving was kind of a big thing in the 80s, but as a police officer, how did drunk driving impact the community where you were?
Well, first of all, it had personal impact because a drunk driving incident changed my career and it changed my life. As most of you know, I've been sober for 16 years now. And one of the precipitating events was me being asleep behind the wheel after I had too much to drink. I mean, I had the wherewithal to pull over, but that's all water under the bridge. Thankfully, I didn't hurt anybody. And I think that's what a lot of people miss, especially police officers who feel invincible and are trying to bury the pains of trauma sometimes, and they drink too much maybe, or maybe abuse prescription medication or whatever. Sometimes you're thinking, well, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if I got caught, because then my life will change. And that's essentially what happened to me. I'm not going to tell you that in my incident, which I was not arrested for, by the way. It was strictly disciplinary, internal discipline. And people say all the time, oh, you just got a break because you're a cop. Okay. I'll open the file to anybody that wants to see it. And you tell me if I got a break. I'm fine with what I got because I have to take responsibility for what I did. And it was 16 years ago, like I said. I got what I got because I did what I did. And I took responsibility for it. And luckily, I had a sheriff and a chief deputy who saw that I still had potential, that I was just kind of a lost sheep because of the substance abuse. You'll never look at drunk driving the same if you respond to a drunk driving crash where a young person has been taken from us, or you have to inform a family that either that somebody that they love was in a car with somebody who was drinking, or somebody was drinking and they were driving and they were killed. This is like the extreme example. Like you have an exemplary family. You have two wonderful kids who, on the eve of a wedding, they were going to stand up for their sister. They were going to be groomsmen in their sister's wedding, and on the eve of, they were taken out by somebody who had a little bit too much to drink. Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau were on a bike ride in their rural area of their, I guess their hometown or close to it. They're from like New Jersey, around the Pennsylvania border, somewhere around there is my guess. And you hit the nail on the head, John. There's no like proper lighting out there. It's like just a desolate area. It's street lights. So this woman was coming up on the two bikers, on the two bicyclists, Johnny and Matthew, 31 and 29 respectively. And she kind of moved off to the left to avoid them. And so she slowed down, obviously. Well, also on rural roads like that are people driving fast and are impatient with the people in front of them. So this guy had enough, apparently, I'm guessing. And he's like, come on, get out of the way. So he tries to pass her on the right. Well, remember why she's drifting left. She's drifting left because they're on the shoulder of the road on the right. And so he struck them both. And the rest is kind of history. So then when the daughter's trying to explain the injuries, and by the way, those are the only clips really available of those 911 calls. The family fought to keep the 911 calls out of the media in total. They're just very protective of the family and the privacy, and especially of the condition of the two boys, which I completely understand. The calls were, however, and the body cam were released after the prosecutors showed it to the family, because, it's still kind of one of those open records things. And we're not doing this to exploit by any stretch of the imagination. If this changes somebody's mind about calling for an Uber versus getting behind the wheel of a car after having too many drinks, mission accomplished is what we're looking at. And obviously it's a pretty big news story when you take this kid was making $9 million a year playing hockey. And, you'll see in a second, like, it pales in comparison to what kind of kid he was and what kind of, family that was that he came from.
Well, first I'd like to share what Greg said. It was shocking news to us. It was just such a hard reality when you wake up in the morning and hear that. And the biggest thing, and Greg and I have talked about this, that, Johnny is the national news, and, my phone's been ringing from all over Canada, United States this morning, but they're both boys, and they're both so close to our program. So can you imagine Guy and Jane, the parents, one of the youngest daughter, Katie's getting married today, and they were all back to celebrate, and now you lose two sons, so it's almost unimaginable. And we know life is difficult, and this is certainly one of those times. But he was a special Gaudreau connection, like Greg said to us. Both amazing players, and people all talk about Johnny as Olympic player and world class, but just as someone to raise the level of your practice, to be Johnny hockey, but not wear that label. Well respected by all the students here, the teachers, and by Greg and I. If you ask us the name of our favorite players, they've got to be both boys are going to be.
You guys switched seats at some point during the game? Like, what happened there?
Yeah, well, when we first sat down, we were sitting, and I think I was in 13 first, and then the second period, then Meredith went into the 13th, and then the third one we were like, Guy, and of course, it's Guy, because...
Here we go.
I'm the man.
Right, John? Who's the boss?
Who runs the show down here?
Here you go.
Love you.
First get back to your interview.
We're going to give him some spotlight.
Why don't we go to the 911 call?
Yeah, let's.
My mom's driving. There was two people driving bikes. My mom got over to get out of the way to not hit them. Someone came up super fast on her right side and hit the two people on bikes.
Oh my God! All right.
Is anybody hurt? Yes, they're both on the ground.
Do you have the condition of the patient?
No, we can't. It's dark. We can't see.
Drew, regarding the 911 calls, that's something that we will get a lot, particularly after dark. This actually happens every autumn when the sun starts setting earlier and earlier, as we start seeing more collisions between vehicles. Cars versus deer happens a lot, but pedestrians sometimes. And it can be frustrating when you're talking to people at the scene. You want to know the condition of the patients. You heard one of the dispatchers or call takers say that. What's the condition of the patient? We want to know how bad it is. What is it that what we're dealing with? Are we dealing with some bumps, bruises, a broken leg? Are dealing with a potential fatality? Trying to find out the condition of the patient is always difficult. It seems like how it always goes is there's someone that goes and tends to the patient and learns everything, while someone else is on the phone with us, basically summoning us for help. So it can be frustrating to get the proper resources in motion and convey to the ambulance how serious the trauma is, when sometimes callers just really aren't ready to make that call. You could hear that she was very excited terrified, in fact, and that's something that can really hamper information gathering when people have those big emotions. I can understand why the family would want to keep that, especially once details start coming out over the phone of what happened to their poor family members. I could understand why you wouldn't want that to be fodder for entertainment for anyone else, but it can also be instructive. It's not just these two hockey players who were struck down on bicycles. It happens all across the country all the time. And I think it's important that people know about the danger of drunk drivers. And I say that because I'll take calls on administrative lines, meaning not 911s. And someone will say, is this where I go to issue a traffic complaint? I'm like, yeah, I could take a traffic complaint. Well, it's not really an emergency. I'm like, okay, well, what's happening and where is it happening? And they give me details that, pretty much indicate someone's drunk driving. They're lane driving, they're weaving back and forth, their speed's inconsistent. Sometimes they've vaulted the curb. And I'm like, this is an emergency. If you see someone driving that badly, if they're drunk driving or they're driving impaired from something else or having a medical emergency, they're riding around in a 2,000-pound bullet, and sometimes they're neighborhoods and areas of other vulnerable people or anyone else, and that's what 911 is there for. So if you see something like that, it is an emergency, and dial 911. Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, I get another little piece of background before we get to the body cam footage, because I want to walk you through what a standard field sobriety exercise looks like, and this is a very important one, because this guy could be facing murder charges, if vehicular homicide charges, if so just bear in mind, Johnny Hockey was a trademarked name. Johnny Gaudreau played at Boston College rather, with his younger brother. They were 2 years apart. They played on the same line, or they played on the same team anyway, while when Johnny's final year came around and he was named the Hobie Baker Award winner, which is a huge deal. It's the greatest, it's the best player in NCAA hockey. So he signed a big contract and played in Calgary for a few years. Then he signed a bigger contract as he wanted to come back home. But the family seems to have always been about they're so likable or lovable, and people just love to be around them and support them. So he took flack initially when he was a young kid because he trademarked this Johnny Hockey. He trademarked the term Johnny Hockey because that's what people called him in Boston, Johnny Hockey. And he didn't want people to infringe on that. He didn't want people to exploit it or he wanted control over it, or his family did. And I totally get it. I totally get where people might think who's this kid? Who do you think he is? But I also get the other part of this, that he earned it. He earned that title. He also earned the title, very jokingly, Johnny Ham and Cheese, because he had a very, very delicate palate. And there was a legendary story where he and his teammates, were all going out to sushi one night. And he went across to a sketchy sub shop and got a ham and cheese sandwich. And he ate the ham and cheese in the sushi place because he didn't want the sushi, because he had a very discernible palate. But so at any rate, he opted to leave Calgary and signed with Columbus, not out of trade, but to get closer to home. He had the opportunity to play for the New Jersey Devils, which is his home state, but in his own words said, I wanted to be close to home, but not that close to home, because I don't want to be distracted during the season. And I got the feeling that they just don't tell anybody no. If you show up at Johnny Gaudreau's door, you're going to come up, you're going to be sitting in the kitchen, probably eating, pasta and meatballs before long. And he probably loves that. He loves the privacy aspect too. He's trying to raise a family on his own. I want to take you through the body cam of this, because in it, there are standard field sobriety exercises. I'll explain in a little bit why we call them field sobriety exercises, but go ahead and get it going.
All right, where were you coming from, sir?
Taco Bell in Pennsville.
Here's your ID. Where were you before Taco Bell?
My house.
Okay, how much have you had to drink today?
I mean, I've been drinking beers but I haven't had one in like 2 hours.
Okay.
So since the accident, like probably an hour or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna run you through a few tests.
Yeah, that's
All
fine.
right. Go ahead and put that cigarette out.
Yeah. And just FYI, I had surgery on my knee on Friday, so
Okay.
I'm kipping around.
All right. We'll get there.
Man.
Kill the lights in front of your car real quick.
Sure.
Step over here for me.
Yep. All right.
Just back right up to his car.
Yep.
The lights for me. Yeah. Excuse me. All right, what I want you to do, just so you're kind of more my height, is lean back into that bumper, kind of sit on it, lower, right there. All right. See the tip of my pen?
Yep.
I want you to follow that with your eyes and your eyes only. Don't move your head, okay?
Okay.
The tip up here.
The top tip or
Yep,
bottom
the top
tip?
tip. See it?
Yep.
You don't wear contacts?
No.
No? No problems with your eyes?
No.
All right, and you're not injured as a result of the accident?
I'm just freaked out.
Okay. All right, follow the tip. Don't move your head.
So you might be asking, what's all this about? What are they looking for? They're looking for HGN, which is horizontal gaze nystagmus. And that guy is kind of acting what we would call normal. I mean, anybody would call normal. You don't think he's drunk. But if you look at these eyes on the video here, you'll see when it gets to its maximum periphery, when it gets all the way to the right, they start jumping around. And when it gets all the way to the left, they start jumping around. So I'll explain it in detail in a minute.
Step out, go right to the center of the road.
All right, so you heard him. He says, step out, go straight to the center of the road. And that might seem like an odd statement. I'm sure that they have the road blocked off to do the traffic homicide investigation. 1, 2, before we get to the next test, let's explain the first. And I called it a test by mistake. It's an exercise. We stopped calling them tests back in the 90s because tests indicate these are pass or fail. What we're looking for in a DUI investigation are indicators, like just indicators, not pass or fail. But you see that guy is having a normal conversation, not slurring his words. He's not being a jerk. He's saying, I'm freaked out right now. He admitted to having six beers or so, that he was just driving up to the Taco Bell and back home. The last beer he had was about an hour ago, and he's not slurring one bit. Professional drunks, by the way, I may know this from experience, can probably carry on a normal conversation without slurring after a large amount of alcohol. So he's carrying on this conversation. He's not slurring. What you cannot fake are a couple things, and that's why we do the field sobriety exercises, one of which is horizontal gaze nystagmus. You saw it. And that's where you follow the pen. You're being asked to follow the pen, or just the tip of the pen, actually. There's usually a light right at the tip. And your eyes will bounce when they get to the periphery. And there's a degree, there's like a degree that they're looking for. So when it gets to a certain degree and it starts bouncing, it's a pretty good indicator that your central nervous system is responding to the effects of alcohol. It's proven, it's backed by court, it's science, what have you. So that's what the pen test is all about. You have any questions so far?
I want to know how what we're getting at legally. You know, you've established this nystagmus, this bouncing of the eyes. Doesn't that just give you permission to do your next step of a more thorough or invasive investigation?
You're okay. So let's back way up. No matter at what point in the investigation you are, when you first come in contact with somebody like this, in a situation like this, you have somebody who's identifying him as a driver, he's identifying himself as a driver, you have two people seriously injured, you have to tell him that you are conducting a criminal investigation and not just a traffic investigation. Okay. It's, one is going to be part of the other, but you have to be very specific. And there's case law that says you have to Mirandize them if you ask them certain questions. If you look on your driver, I wish I had my license with me, but if you look on your driver's license, you'll see somewhere in there, I'll guarantee it, most states have it, there's an implied consent on there that says, if you accept this privilege to drive in our state, you are saying that you will cooperate with an investigation involving impairment, and may be subject to blood, breath, or urine testing if there's probable cause to believe that you're impaired.
That's what I'm getting at, is you're trying to establish probable cause to take urine from them, blood from them, or breath from them, right?
Sure. So that's what the nystagmus will do, because when you think about it, anybody can, and I'm not trying to give tips here of how to get around a DUI. The best way to get around a DUI is just to call an Uber. But if you wanted to, if he wanted to, he would just say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to submit to any of these exercises. And the police would have to make a determination at that point whether they had probable cause to believe he was impaired or not, and then go from there. There might even be a situation where they would have to get a search warrant to get his blood, to draw his blood. It just depends. It depends on the jurisdiction. It depends on the case law of that jurisdiction.
Sometimes that might mean calling and waking up a judge.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, generally there's a judge on call for stuff like that, but yes, absolutely.
Back to the body cam?
Yep. Go back to the body cam and we'll break down the second exercise.
Go right here to the line. Yep. All right, stay right there and face me. You mentioned surgery to your knee. How long ago was that?
Friday.
Friday? Is it affecting you right now?
I mean, I'm dipping around, yeah.
All right. At any point, if you're in pain, just let me know.
Yeah.
All right.
Very important for the jury to hear that we're not you don't want that brought up in Perry Mason style in the trial where the defendant's like, well, here's my medical records. I just had surgery on Friday, the Friday before, and that's why, I didn't do so well on your exercises. They're aware of his surgery. They're aware of his knee condition. They kind of ask him, are you okay? Are you in any pain? He says, nope. And they said, okay, fine. We're going to run you through this exercise and you tell me if there's any pain and we'll stop.
The first test we're going to do is the walk and turn. I'm going to put you in the starting position. I want you to
test is a hard habit to break. I got to be honest with you.
Hold that starting position until I tell you to begin the test. You understand?
Yep.
Starting position is going to be your right foot in front of your left foot, touching heel to toe just like this.
Yep.
Hands down at your side. All right. Do you want to take your flip-flops off or you want to leave them on?
I'll leave them on.
All right. So you can take that position, right foot in front of your left foot, hands down at your side.
All right. You can tell most of these things are scripted, but there are things along the way where he's kind of like, do you want to take your flip-flops off? Because he's heard it all before. Like he's heard it all before in court. Like, nah, I couldn't do the test. I was wearing flip-flops. We've got all the tricks. You know what I mean? Or most of them anyway. So he's kind of throwing those in as we go. Understand also that this is called a divided attention exercise. So you are being evaluated not only on how you perform the exercise, but how well you pay attention to the instructions and if you can track the instructions in general. He's using very simple terms. Just keep your arms down at your side, put your feet together, heel to toe, and I want you to walk just like this. And he demonstrates it on the camera, so there's no question. It's my guess that we're seeing the body cam, but there's a dash camera that's videoing this also. Any questions so far?
No, let's keep going.
All right. When I tell you to begin, you're going to take 9 heel-to-toe steps forward, counting each step out loud. Upon the completion of 9 steps, you're going to keep the front foot planted, series of small steps with your other foot, and turn around. Okay, it's going to go like this. 1, 2, 3. I'm doing 3 for demonstration. You're going to do 9. Completion 9 steps, keeping that front foot planted, series of small steps with your other foot, and 9 heel-toe steps back. 1, 2, 3. The entire time, keeping your hands down at your side, you're looking down at your foot and counting out loud.
So you really have to pay attention, and I guarantee there are people that are watching this that are sober that are like, wait, so you're saying 9. So just imagine if you're a little tipsy, just a little tipsy, how well you're gonna, or how you can muddle that instruction.
Yeah, if I'm nervous too, because I was just in a traffic collision, like he said, I'm freaked out, and all of a sudden I'm receiving this long dissertation that could determine whether or not I go home free tonight. At least in my mind, that's what it looks like. I'm going to be a little bit nervous. And I'm going to be like, okay, back up a second. How many steps am I taking? How many forward? How many back? It's intimidating too, just police officers and being in that situation.
Yeah, I get it. I totally understand it. I've actually been there. So, but the other thing too is like it's just you're not being evaluated on you doing this perfectly. This isn't like a gymnast Olympic score. This is like we're looking for certain indicators while you're doing it. Like, first of all, are you swaying when you're standing there listening? Did you put your feet in front of one foot in front of the other foot like you were asked to do? So there are like other things in general that you're being watched for that you probably don't even think about because you're concentrating on the test and the instructions, but there are other things that are being watched.
Once you start the test, do not stop until you've completed it.
Got it.
You understand?
Yes.
You may begin.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Ow. Keep going.
Like I explained, 9 steps forward, series of small steps, 9 back.
Ow. Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Good?
Yeah.
All right. Next test you're going to do.
All right. Just again, this gets back to professional drunks. Like if this guy, like I'm not picking on him for this. I'm telling you, I've been there. If this guy's had 6 beers and it's just, he had 6 beers after work and then 2 more, after that while he was driving around, which is, I think is what ended up happening. He's a professional drunk. He's probably able to nail that line. He can walk straight on that line. What he can't do is follow the instructions to turn around and shuffle and, series of small steps, walk 9 steps back. You see, like every time he falls off the line or whatever, he throws in an ow. The pain may be genuine, it may not, who knows. But those are the kinds of things that we're looking for. Did he follow the instructions? Did he walk in a straight line? Because some people just completely demolish that. And that, by the way, is why you do it like right in the middle of the road if the road is blocked off, because you have a straight line. If not, we have DUI investigators that actually come with duct tape and they'll put, or you could do it in a parking lot with, with the parking, with where you park your cars, those lines, or we'll just put a straight line of duct tape down for you to do your test.
So what's this guy indicating right now? You've seen a few things. He got confused in the middle, or he stopped, or he said, ow. If you're in the place of this police officer, what's the indication?
Well, the other thing that I'm not seeing or smelling is his breath or his person. And I don't know that he has glassy eyes. I don't think it conveyed well over the video, because those are 2 things that you're going to look for. Was he fumbling around when you got there? He doesn't seem to be. I mean, he's smoking a cig when you get there. So, sometimes that's like, okay, just like you say, he's pretty nervous, but sometimes that's the mask, the odor of alcohol. And then what you can never fool is the nystagmus. So like, you just kind of hold that card close to your vest, and you're thinking, perhaps you're starting a running total in your head. Like we're about 40% there now. And he's not following the instructions on the walk and turn. He's in a little pain, so maybe 50%, but then you back it down a percent or two because of the pain. I don't want to make it sound like it's completely arbitrary, because it's not. So most of the time you have a script right in front of you that you fill out. Like, did they do the 9 steps? Did they shuffle this? And you check and you check and you check. And if they don't perform 3 within the series of the exercise, well, then that's a pretty good indicator that they're impaired.
And the police officers at the scene are going to document all this. If they're having problems performing any level of the test, they'll document all those things. And then ultimately it comes down to some level of discretion. Is it more probable than not that they're intoxicated while they've been driving a car? And if they can make that case, if they can articulate their probable cause or their suspicion, particularly within the guidelines of what their experience is. I couldn't go out right now after watching how to do field sobriety examinations on YouTube and go out and perform these things and then say in front of a judge or a jury, based off of my experience, he seemed to fail 3 out of 4 pro tips on how to do FSTs. And that's why I think he was intoxicated. He's received extensive training. He's documented all this. And then he's going to make the claim that there's probable cause to go to the next step.
Yeah, and by the way, these were being done on dash cam long before there was body cam, for the reason you mentioned. So you'll see a lot of times like a full-on DUI investigator, or when they're doing a homicide investigation or whatever, they'll flash their light like at the camera, at the dash cam when there's a mess up, and like when they don't perform like they should on the test, on the exercise, not on the test. It's all written, by the way, in a report, just like you say, just in case that video gets suppressed, or vice versa. Sometimes the statements might get suppressed, so you got the video to hang your hat on. But you're right. It is all, and on top of that, the state is going to ask this guy, what's your training and experience on DUI investigation.
And for those who worried that, they might be drinking and driving and eventually get busted for that based on the subjectivity of an officer, just remember you have a remedy for that. It's called going to court and paddling it out. You can make your case, you can get a lawyer, and you can try to put the pressure on that officer to convince a jury that maybe you should not be in that situation. I'll continue if you're ready.
Go for it.
Is the 1-leg stand. All right, again, I'm going to put you in the starting position. You're going to hold that starting position until I tell you to begin the test.
Okay.
You understand?
Yep.
Starting position is both hands down to your side, both feet together. Just like that.
Yep.
Touch both feet. All right? When I tell you to begin, you're going to raise one leg of your choosing approximately 6 inches off the ground. Keep the bottom of your foot parallel to the ground. Look down at your foot and count out loud 1001, 1002, 1003, and so on until I tell you to stop. Remember, you can raise either leg, whatever's going to be best for you and your knee.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to demonstrate 1001, 1002, 1003, and so on until I tell you to stop.
Okay.
You understand the directions?
Yep.
You may begin.
1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. 2005, 2006. Okay. Sorry, I'm just freaked out. Like, what am I supposed to be doing again?
I'm counting it out loud until I tell you to stop.
Okay.
All right, this is divided attention again. This is an equilibrium kind of thing too, and it's there's not necessarily a certain number, but what you're looking for is, did they follow the instructions? Did they understand the instructions? And are they able to look down at their foot? First of all, you'd be shocked that when you tell someone to put their foot 4 inches off the ground or pull their foot 6 inches off the ground, what people actually think 4 inches or 6 inches is.
You know, a lot of men get that confused.
Yeah, they do. Right. You're unable to maintain balance after a certain amount of time if you're impaired. Again, it's an indicator. It's something that's going into the tally. Like this guy made it 3, 4, and he had to put his foot down to maintain his balance. Then he lifted his foot up again. He went 1 or 2 more, and then he's like, "I'm sorry, can you just repeat this whole thing?" This is why I call it divided attention, or this is why it's called divided attention. You're focusing on the instructions, and you're not able to defeat, no pun intended, looking down at your foot and trying to maintain your balance. You're doing 2 different things with your mind that's impaired. It's going to make you put your foot down, or it's going to make you miss the directions. One of the other.
1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 10,000, 11,000. It's getting hard.
All right, you said it's been about an hour since your last drink?
About that, yeah.
And how many did you drink?
I mean, since like noon today, like 5 or 6.
6 since noon?
Yeah.
Beer or what was it?
Beer. Just beer. No light.
All right, turn around and place your hands behind your back. Let's take this watch off, okay?
Yep. There.
Yeah, we'll grab everything. What do you need? Your phone, your wallet? Where's that at? Francine, where's your phone?
You want to put them in the back of your car? Or one? I got Flanagan's car. I drove up here. One of them. We're searching.
All right, he's being compliant and reasonable. I think that's worth talking about. I mean, he's not fighting anybody. He knows. And so he's saying that he had 6 beers since noon. I think it came out later he had 6 beers plus 2 while he was driving to the Taco Bell.
Oh.
Or something to that effect. But it had been an hour since he had one because probably it took them a little bit to get there and, that kind of thing. So the alcohol is going to stay in your system. It's not going to burn off, especially if he hadn't had any food. If you went to the Taco Bell and he hadn't eaten what was in the Taco Bell, obviously he was hungry or he wouldn't have gone to Taco Bell. But
that's the thing, is that after you have a drink too, is that it's not just a static thing. Yeah, your stomach is digesting and metabolizing that alcohol. So you can have a drink, you can wait 10 minutes, but if you just had a big drink or a couple of shots, by the time you're getting in the car, you're probably still metabolizing that alcohol, and you're actually getting more drunk as you drive away from the house.
It's on its way up, and there are there are scientific equations that can be applied to this. Like there are I'm trying to think of the term, but there are people that can actually, like they're PhDs or doctors or engineers, pathologists or whatever, that can determine, like, if you had your last beer at this and your weight is that, and you didn't have any food here, then your alcohol would be, your impairment level or your BAC at the time of the crash would be in between this and this. And we know that there's an established 0.08 in most states for impairment. It used to be 0.10, but it's 0.08 now. And this guy, by the way, so you'll look at it, and any DUI investigator worth their weight can give you a ballpark of where they think this guy is. But he was at like a 0.087 something. He was just above the legal limit of being impaired, which means he was above the legal limit of being impaired, by the way, and he killed 2 people. So there's that. So the body cam showed that it was 8 p.m. So it had been 8 hours since he'd been drinking by his admission. Just a little background on this guy. I'm not going to give his name. You can Google it if you want. He was a member of, I think, the New Jersey National Guard. So he was a guardsman, like an active guardsman, but he also, during the day, or, his day job or his permanent job or whatever was, he worked at some type of substance abuse and mental health facility. So I don't know what he did there. I don't know if he was a counselor. I don't know what he saw or what he dealt with or whatever. But it's obvious that he probably had some type of alcohol problem, if I had to guess, substance abuse problem on his own. So, so here we are.
It's not just that. I mean, the simple fact is that he struck 2 bicyclists and killed them. And upon investigation, we found that he had been drinking alcohol and he was just over the limit. But that's really only half of it, because the other half, which I think very few people are ready to just recognize, is that there's a lot of asshole drivers out there. And when you're in a hurry to get a chimichanga and someone in front of you is slowing down and all you're thinking about is yourself and you want to pass that person on the right, maybe the alcohol is not influencing your ability to hit the brake. You're just performing a maneuver like that because you're a jerk. There's a lot of people out there that are just bad drivers, and this could have been caused simply by bad driving, and he got caught because they got killed, and upon further investigation, he was just over the legal limit. So there could be a lot going on here, and I'm not trying to attack this guy and say that he's a bad driver specifically. I'll just own this myself. I'm not a great driver. I'm not the most attentive driver. I'm used to driving in situations and in places where there's not a lot of other vehicles, and it kind of brings out a lot of my bad habits. But we should be good drivers. We should be attentive to the road. We should obey rules of the road. We should also just be conscientious and defensive drivers, and assume that if maybe the person in front of you driving is slowing down and moving over to the left, that they're trying to safely pass something on the road. Maybe watch that person in front of you for cues about what you should be doing instead of trying to get around them. I just see bad drivers being in that situation. And we as 911 dispatchers have to deal with this a lot. It always is terrible when we're sending all kinds of resources out to save a person, an ambulance, fire trucks, and then helicopters. And then we get told by someone at the scene that we can just disregard the helicopter because helicopters don't transport deceased people. So having to say over the radio that the person at the scene is 10-7 or passed away, it always sucks because, you're at the end of the road at that point and you can't help that person. Drew?
So one of the most eye-opening things I had to go through, first of all, John, you've driven with me.
So, you are a driver. That is what I will say about that.
I don't know where it comes from because I just drive, you know what I mean? But there are people that are nervous when I'm driving, and I get it. I understand it.
The people that ride with me close their eyes. So
I am trained by the state, 1, and 2, I have never heard anybody characterize my driving the way that you did when you were here.
You drive like you mean it. Yeah.
Yeah. You drive like you've got somewhere to be, I think is what you said, which is perfect. That's because I'm used to doing that. That's how I got to calls as quickly as I did. I mean, once that's in your blood, I think that's kind of in your blood. I mean, maybe that's not what everybody does, but that's kind of what I did. So I try my best. I've been doing my best to temper my driving, especially.
Well, the thing is now you're driving this Audi really hard. This is not a state issued Crown Vic. This isn't something you just get to trade in when you rack up enough miles.
Right. But the nut behind the wheel is the same. Let's get that straight. It's not like I'm oh, let me drive differently because this is my car. No, that's how I drive. I just drive like I'm going to save someone or interrupt a crime, or I'm really hungry and I need to get somewhere. Mm-hmm. So there's all of that. I mean, he seems to be very compliant. He does, it's not deceptive. I don't know if they front loaded the Miranda warning, but it's not deceptive to say, how many drinks did you say you had? Because that's an incriminating statement, especially when you're talking about a double traffic homicide. So the guy's compliant. He's got no reason not to be. I mean, I say he's got no reason not to be. As an interview and interrogations instructor, I would tell you, like, you don't owe anybody anything. It's the police's job to investigate and determine if you committed a crime or not. It's not your job to put the case together for them. So, take that for what it's worth. But it's not going to change anything. And I know that there are some hurting people in this world over this situation. One, just not even to mention the families. So Matthew, let me see if I still have the photos, but here's Matthew. Now, this is not Johnny. Johnny is the NHLer. Matthew was in the ECHL. He played at Boston College, but he's in the ECHL, and he was a great hockey player too. I think he signed with the Islanders, but he never made it to the big team. This is him showing off the photos of the sonogram of his wife, who gave birth like right after he died. So, the kid will never know his dad. Then we have this other sad moment of what drunk driving can do. And I'm showing you all of this for a reason. This was from Johnny's memorial service, or from both of their memorial service.
John and I had the best 6 months as a family of 4. These will forever be the best 6 months of my life. There's specifically 1 week that I will cherish forever and will be my favorite week of my life out of those 6 months. We're actually a family of 5. I'm in my 9th week of pregnancy with our 3rd baby. A total surprise, but again, John was beaming and so excited. I was so nervous because this was, again, a total surprise, but his reaction was just immediately kissing me and hugging me, even though I was driving the car. After the initial excitement sank in, every time he looked at me, he would just say, "You're nuts, you know that?" 3 kids. Noah, our oldest, hasn't even turned 2 yet.
So when I was working through my sobriety at the beginning, at the very early stage, I worked with a woman who to me is an angel on earth. Her name is Linda Unfred, and she was the chapter president of Mothers Against Drunk Driving for Hillsborough County. She happened to work where I worked at the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. She worked in our legal section, and she was just a wonderful human being. But she was just, I'm telling you, just angelic. You caught a good vibe when you talked to her. And she had been through so much because her twin sister, when they were really young, was killed by a drunk driver. So she started this chapter of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and she invited me to a victim impact panel. So what happens usually when people are convicted of DUI, sometimes they'll get probation or they'll get some kind of rehab, or they'll be court ordered to go to substance abuse program. They'll go to 12-step programs and have the sponsor sign the little form. But the judge will also say, "Hey, I want you also to attend a victim impact panel." So she invited me to go, and I went on my own volition because I think I needed to hear it. And I did, and I did need to hear it, and that was why I just played what I played for you, because that's what you don't think about. That's the selfishness of drunk driving. You don't think about Matthew, who's got a wife that's 9 months pregnant when he's killed. You don't think of Johnny, whose wife is 9 weeks pregnant and already has 2 babies. And you don't think about the mother and father that raised these 2 kids for 31 and 29 years. You don't think about the sister who was getting married the day after that those 2 were killed. That the only reason they were together on a bike ride was because they were going to be in your wedding the next day. This is, and then on top of that, just the devastation it caused, the ripple effect, because he was Johnny Hockey. He was just Johnny Gaudreau. He was just such a nice good kid, big smile. And you saw him like, what, I mean, I don't know if you remember when his dad was on the set, they were celebrating his 100-point season. And his dad was on the set and his mom was being interviewed in Calgary there. Dude, there's not a whole lot going on in Calgary. So like that, hockey is royalty there. And so mom and dad were royalty. And, Johnny jumped on the set and what did he told him? He's like, hey, you tell him who's boss, Johnny. And he rubs his head and he says, love you. He like, look, man, I mean, this is the ultimate parents and son moment. He's on live TV doing an interview. The parents are proud parents of 100-point scorer in the National Hockey League. And he's still taking a moment to be the dad. This is horrible. This should rip your heart out. And it should make you think twice about having a couple beverages and getting behind the wheel thinking, I'm fine. I'll be okay. It's not about the DUI. It's not about the $5,000 in attorney's fees and the bond and the embarrassment and the losing of the job it's about Johnny Gaudreau and it's about Matthew Gaudreau and it's about their little children. And this is the impact that hockey has. And this is the impact that Johnny Gaudreau has. It's not just raving lunatic hockey fans in Calgary who've got nothing else to do when the Stampede isn't in town or whatever. He moved to Columbus and he became instantly loved by the Columbus people. And these are the hockey fans I see. Like, I had season tickets to the Lightning for a couple of years and I sat near like a wheelchair section and they were always full. And it's because like as dumb as this sounds, hockey brings people joy. And when somebody on the ice can play at that level and be a human on that level off the ice, it hurts. It really hurts. So I just, this is kind of somewhat therapeutic for me just to kind of be able to not be preachy with anybody, but do our own little mini victim impact panel and show you this is the devastation of drunk driving.
It happens all over. I remember we had a case where a jogger was out and she was struck by a drunk driver who fled the scene, and an investigation began to identify that person. And ultimately we did just in time. We were able to find his vehicle with some telltale evidence on it right before it rained. It was actually an amazing case. But the more that I learned about her, the more gut-wrenched I actually felt for her. I had never really felt for a victim of an accident like that before, because I was learning that she was doing all kinds of things for her community, and she was going to be going to college on a full scholarship. And it's amazing how the people who seem to have the most potential to do so much good in our world are taken from us early. They always say the good die young, but people of all different kinds are the victims of drunk driving. And it's one of the things that's really all too common in our society. And we need to just not be blasé about it because it's so common. We don't really care. We kind of, glaze over the ads when we see it on TV, not to drink and drive, but it's important. And I think what you said earlier was the most important part, was the selfishness. When you are having a good time and you want to go operate your vehicle and you're thinking about yourself and what you want to do and not about these other people that could be affected. So I appreciate your candor. I appreciate you kind of opening up and telling your own personal story about how alcohol affected you as a person, as a police officer. I will say, for those of anyone out there that think that maybe Drew got off a little bit easy, I don't know if he did or didn't. I wasn't a part of that, but I will tell you that sometimes the law can prescribe things to people to correct their behavior that doesn't work at all. We can put people on scram bracelets, other forms of electronic monitoring to make sure that they're not drinking. And we can have them come down to the courthouse and do a PBT twice a day on court order. We can court order rehab, and then they later escape rehab. They'll literally be on an escape status because they're leaving treatment at a facility. Sometimes it takes someone hearing from someone that they respect and care about, whether it's a mom or a boss or a sheriff or whatever, and saying that this behavior is no longer going to continue. There are ways of restoring someone to their job and to their life without necessarily going down a legal route, which is not necessarily a productive one either. So for those of you who say that there's only one right way to handle it, I'm not going to minimize the legal implications of breaking the law. The law should be enforced. But if we're going to fix people and make it so that when they get out of jail, they're not continuing to drink and drive, as I also see all the time, people with their 4th, 5th, 6th DUIs.
Oh, yeah.
That we've got to find a way to help them and fix them. And that's not always going to be a one-size-fits-all solution. Drew, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's the thing is, it's not always just selfish, as in he just can't stop drinking kind of situation. I mean, the driving is obviously dumb, but you're impaired for a reason, right? So your judgment is off, and you're thinking, well, I'm fine, I can make it home, and blah blah blah. But you can't. You've got to resign to the fact that the second drink you have, or you're done driving for the night. You can't do it. But there are people with legitimate substance abuse problems that just, it never ceases to amaze me that, for instance, the pallbearers in Johnny's funeral there were 3 NHLers, Mangiapane. I'm trying to think of the second one, but the third one was Kevin Hayes. Kevin Hayes is just a funny, he played for the Rangers for a long time. Great forward, good. I think he even played at Boston College with Johnny. And Kevin's brother, Jimmy Hayes, played in the NHL also. And when Jimmy Hayes had just turned 31, he was found deceased with a inordinate amount of fentanyl and cocaine in his system. There are substance abuse problems, and there are reasons for the substance abuse problems. It's not always just like, oh yeah, he's out to have a good time and he's a barfly and he likes this and he likes that. And then there are also just like one-offs. There are amateur Cinco de Mayo, Super Bowls coming up. Those New Year's Eve, those are the worst days to be out on the road, in my opinion. I'm scared to death to be out on the road on those days. Because people that don't normally drink probably tend to drink to excess. And if you don't normally drink, then you don't know your limits, and you don't know that you shouldn't be behind the wheel. And I'm definitely not making excuses for anybody. I mean, there's definitely punishment for that. But again, it's like, okay, so we can throw you under the jail. What's that going to do? And is it going to fix your substance abuse issue if you have one? But it's not going to bring Johnny back. It's not going to bring Matthew back. And it's definitely not going to fix, issues like this. This is Noah. This is his daughter. I mean, like before a game, just, dude, he was a dad. You know what I mean? He was like, he's a young rising star in hockey, but he was a dad. And this Noah, the daughter's never going to know the adult version of, as an adult, is never going to know the version of her dad. You know what I mean? So, yes, I'm glad you framed it that way. I definitely agree with what you said. But
what's sad is right now there's people alive in New Orleans. There's people alive in Philadelphia. They're alive right now, Thursday night, and come Sunday night, Monday morning, they're going to be dead. And we know it's going to happen because of the excesses of alcohol, the excesses of celebration. When Philadelphia won the NFC championship, there was a young guy who was playing basketball for Temple, and he climbed up a pole outside, and I don't know if it was a light pole or what, but he climbed up a pole in celebration, and he fell off, landed on his back and hit his head, and he later died from that. That was a young rising basketball star, also from Canada, came down to the United States to play basketball. And who's next? There's someone alive right now, like I said, whether it's in New Orleans down where the Super Bowl is going to be played, or in Philadelphia or Kansas City or elsewhere, and someone's going to be drinking and they're going to get behind the wheel of a car, and someone else is going to die on Sunday or Monday. So I know that's sad, but we also need to face that, and we also need to take care of each other. So if you're going to be celebrating this weekend, make sure that you're doing that and taking care of your friends and making sure that they don't make a mistake that takes away a father or a mother from some young child. If you want to be a part of the show, dial 848-COM-911. That's 848-266-6911. Also, make sure
Nice.
that you are tickling our algorithm. Make sure you hit like, hit subscribe. If you think Drew was wrong for the way that he was treated as a police officer who was found to be intoxicated on duty, I want you to put that in the comments.
I wasn't on duty. Stop saying that.
Well,
I was
whatever.
so far away from being on duty.
Well, whenever
I should have been. I won't say I wasn't intoxicated when I was on duty because I was in narcotics for a long time. But
he had to do that to fit in. But make sure you
when I got caught, I was not on duty.
You see, if I frame it this way, then people will definitely get really, really, really upset, and then you have to answer, and then that turns into 30 comments. That's really, really good. For the algorithm.
Oh, dude, that turns into 60 because
you
know what happens to me.
Yes, you get mad, but also so do I. Literally this morning, I decided I typed out something. I'm like, man, I don't want to be dealing with this all day. I don't care. I just deleted the points that I made. I'm like, I don't even care.
I've had a lot of those lately. Like, God, I'm going to do this shit all day.
No point. So, guys, make sure you're hitting us up on your favorite social media, wherever that is. You know what it is. I'm not going to say it here, but all the places that you like to listen to us and watch us, make sure you're following that. And we will catch you on the after show. That's coming up next. I'm going to do some kind of after show lately. You know, I've been putting on reels and things like that. And this is your opportunity where you can interact live with us and have a good time. That's for members only. So another good reason for you to become members of the Comm Center on our YouTube page. You can also become members of us elsewhere for exclusive content. We appreciate that. Drew, good luck to your team, whoever it is you're rooting for this weekend. I will be rooting for injury.
I'm rooting for the Buffalo Bills.
And I'll be rooting for a miss or Clay Martin, I guess. He'll probably be calling the Super Bowl. I don't know, but I don't know. Enjoy your weekend. Huh? God, I wish I could take that away from you.